If you would like to go ahead and skip the intro of today's video, then please click the timestamps that are on screen right now. They will also be appearing throughout the intro. I have a quick little thank you message I wanted to say real quick. Oh yeah, and just a quick note about the intro. The audio is going to sound a little bit different just because I recorded it in the video game in Peak, so bear in mind. But after that, it's the usual quality that you're used to. Let's go. Hey guys, I'm coming to you from Peak, Creepy Fox here. So you might have noticed as of late, I've been doing things a little bit different around here. I've been including gameplay videos. The main reason I've been doing it, there have been some new changes. I'm having to start doing these sorts of things. So I hope you guys don't mind too much. Like I said, you guys can go ahead and skip the intro if you wanted to go ahead and do so and get to the stories. But I wanted to go ahead and just quickly say thank you so much to all of you that have been subscribing. June has been one of the greatest, sorry, I moved over here. It's been one of the greatest months we've seen recently in growth. And well, we reached 100,000 subscribers thanks to all of you.
Oh yeah, Mr. Krabs!
So salutes to you guys. Thank you so much for all your support. So today we got, let's see here, Scary McDonald Stories for you guys. These are McDonald Stories that we've shared here exclusively from Shadow X Sonic Generations. That's going to be playing in the background.
I just love Latinas, Sonic. What?
But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started with today's episode. And with that, let's start. I'm dead. This was in the summer of 1999 when I was 8 years old. I'm female, by the way. My uncle had come to visit us from Juneau, Alaska, since he had time away from work, since he's always been the planner of sorts, and the really rich uncle who gets all of us nice things. He convinced my parents, as well as my other Aunt Susan, and her two sons, them being my cousins, Jack and Thomas, aged 9 and 7 respectively, to take a one-week vacation adventure to Las Vegas and to the Grand Canyon. For context, we were driving from Laguna Beach, California. Now, we would be staying at Circus, and while all of that was fun and all, the point to me writing to the Creepy Fox is to share what happened while on the way to the Grand Canyon. To this day, it cements the reality of the world around us. You see, it is sad how there are creeps out there that lurk on the innocence of others, especially when it comes to children. Oh, but let there be an adult around, and they act like cowards and scatter like cockroaches. Absolute scum of the earth. Yeah, you can probably already tell I don't much like creeps. Anyway, we were still a couple of hours away from the Grand Canyon after spending 4 days in Vegas playing games and swimming in the pool. And for a late lunch, we decided on stopping in a rest area of sorts with a gas station in it. There was also a McDonald's with a PlayPlace and a Subway which was attached to said gas station. Naturally, us 3 kids wanted to go to the McDonald's as it would be a nice break from sitting in the car for so many hours. All the adults agreed. Thus, we make the decision to stay. We all ordered the same kids meal, and after we had our fill of salt and sugar, we go into the PlayPlace where we're happy to see it's pretty much a ghost town in there. It was exciting considering you rarely get an opportunity to play in the PlayPlace, especially without getting interrupted by other kids. Anyway, while I was climbing on top of the jungle gym area, my other 2 cousins playing with the Nintendo 64s that are there were only 2. I happened to look out the huge glass window. This was an indoor PlayPlace with air conditioning, and I noticed a middle-aged, shaggy-looking man just staring over at my cousins in a strange fashion. I don't mean just a casual glance. I'm talking about he's pressed up against the glass windows, with his hands clasped out to his face. Also, this is the summertime, but he's full-on got a hefty sweater and jeans on, unless he was trying to lose weight for some reason. I don't really remember him being a fairly large individual. But then it was strange seeing him dressed in a fashion that could have given him heat exhaustion, if not worse. But I digress. I eventually went down the slide, and when I exit the tunnel of said slide, the guy was gone. Well, whatever, I say to myself, must just be my over-imagination. I walk over to my cousins and I ask them if they had seen the guy looking at them, but they said no, which figured as such since they're boys and they're focused on the video games. If I remember correctly, the McDonald's had Mario Kart 64 set up. Well, by now, I'm starting to feel my bladder screaming at me to go and use the restroom. Thus, I told my cousins I would be right back and they just nod their heads. I go inside the McDonald's, and at this point some more customers had arrived, making the place a bit more lively. No signs of that creepy guy. I make it over to the restroom, where I bumped into my uncle who says he's going to walk over to the gas station to fill up the car. That way we didn't have to worry about it after we were all done eating. I said sweet, and I walk in to do my business. Now what happens next was so quick, so fast, that it's one of those blink and you'll miss it kind of deals. I'd finished my business, and as soon as I opened the restroom door, the male side restroom opened as well. It was that shaggy guy from outside a few minutes ago. I gave him a quick smile and a nod, even though something about him earlier did give me the heebie-jeebies. And when I turned to go down the small walkway that connects this back area to the rest of the McDonald's, he jumps in front of me and then blocks my way. Why he did that? I was confused. But when I suddenly see as he grabs and picks me up, putting me over his shoulder, like the killer does in Dead by Daylight, if you've ever played that game, you'll know what I'm referring to. I now knew this was trouble. I was being kidnapped. This creep was taking advantage of the fact nobody was back here. By the way, even though this is all happening in real time, it felt like slow motion to me. All I remember next happening was me trying to wiggle my way off as I start screaming at the top of my lungs, but I'm not able to hear any sort of noise. I remember seeing my mom at the very back of the McDonald's as she has the view of the door, and she suddenly perked up and her mouth opens to scream, but again, for some reason I can't hear anything at all. The doors to the McDonald's opens as a huge blast of warm air presses against my cheeks, and my eyes squint to the brightness of the outdoors and the sunlight above. Almost as soon as this had all begun, I begin falling to the ground. Again, at least it seems like to me, it's happening in slow motion. But why was I falling? I would find out in just a mere seconds when all my senses returned and I see and hear my uncle just a few feet away. The creep had let me go, and he tries to take off running, screaming and shouting and heading to a nearby parked van with all its windows tinted. He yelled at the driver to wait up, but the van drove off without him. I now saw as my uncle took a heavy swing at the back of this creep's head, which sees him almost instantly fall down to the hot pavement below. My uncle now gets on top of him and then puts him into an armbar hold and yells over to me asking to go inside and to get help. I did, as I finally realized the reality of the situation. My dad and two other large men stormed out of the front doors before I get the chance to go in there. They help with subduing this creep. My mom and aunt now came to get me, and we go inside the McDonald's where one of the employees is now calling 911. Cops arrived in about 15 minutes. The whole time, my uncle, my dad, and the other two men are not letting the man go. And long story short, the cops handcuff the creep and take him away. I did get questioned by one of the nice officers, and she told me that I was safe and the creep was no longer a threat. Though, fast forward about a week later, I would have recurring nightmares. Anyway, speaking of fast forwarding, I'm now a mom and I have two kids myself. I've told them this story on several occasions, and they get the chills anytime they hear it. I mean, it really is crazy when you think about it. 1 minute you're on vacation with your family and you're enjoying your nice summer break. The next thing you know, a random guy grabs you and attempts to kidnap you to do who knows what. I am thankful for my uncle being there at the right place at the right time. I still believe had things not been timed the way they were, where my uncle was now walking back to the McDonald's, things could have ended worse. Not that I think my parents would have been able to catch up to me, but considering this creep was working with an accomplice in a nearby vehicle, they might have gotten me into that van, and we probably would have driven off into the desert. where I might have never been heard from ever again. So my warning to all of you out there, please try your best to stay safe, and parents out there, look after your kids and don't keep your eyes off of them no matter what. This was 2013. The McDonald's I used to work at definitely saw quite an interesting cast of characters, if you really want to call it that. And no, I'm not referring and talking about Ronald McDonald and the other characters. I'm talking about the customers themselves. Sure, you would get plenty of Karens and Kevins, but then you got those really weird people, the ones who would just stare at you, catcall you, and then get angry anytime you call them out on it. Or what about those customers that would get angry because they were waiting for so long, even though the place was jam-packed during rush hour? Ugh, but I guess that's every job where they feel like you owe them the world. But maybe I'd rather save those stories of dealing with rude customers for another day. Let me instead tell you about this one in particular. I was working the window in the evening, and we were now starting to wind down from the evening rush we'd received just an hour prior. My manager was doing her rounds checking up on all of us, and when she got to me, my back was turned toward the window, by the way. I heard a knock and see my manager's facial expression change. I looked back in the direction she was looking, toward the window. I heard a knock and I see my manager's facial expression change. I looked back at the direction she was looking, and there's a homeless lady, the one that I've dealt with plenty of times before in the past when she would harass me for no reason whatsoever. And she was flailing her arms around, acting like she was high off of some drugs. My manager from the windows says that she'll take care of this, and when she opens the window to see what's up with her, she curses at her and then says that she wanted to talk to me. Okay, well, this is quite bizarre. Again, there was nobody else in the drive-thrus, so I just put my best customer service face on, sucked it up, and said, "Hi ma'am, if you want to order something, could you come inside and do it there? This is supposed to be for vehicles only." Oh, you should have seen her. She got so angry with me she started to bang her arms against the glass, calling me vulgar names, and then going as far as saying that she wanted to take a metal rod and stick it, well, down there. Sorry, I'm trying to help the creepy fox from not getting demonetized for telling my story. Anyway, it's just words she's saying, and my manager is asking if I want to take a break, but I said I'm good, it's whatever. She walked away as one of the cashiers said that she needed help with a customer, and when she saw and heard the yelling, she cringed and she whispered, "Yeah, good luck with that," in a joking fashion. Thanks, I guess. Well, finally, I did see a car pulling up to the menu outside, so I focused my attention to the vehicle and I saw the lady walked away. Well, at least whatever hatred she had toward me in that moment had dwindled away. But don't forget about her just yet, because we fast forward to the end of my shift. I was now tired, I smelled like French fries and oil, and I just wanted to get into my apartment, step into the tub and let the warm water and soap wash away the stress of the day. Well, after I bid my co-workers a good evening, and I start making my way through the parking lot, having my keys in my hand, I heard yelling to my right. It was like something straight out of a horror movie, because that lady from earlier comes out from behind one of the large bushes, and she's got this rusty old crowbar. "I'm going to kill you," she said in a sing-songy type voice. Now my body went cold and shivers go down my spine as the look across her face said it all. Why was she targeting me? Sure, she gave me issues before in the past, but this was the first time she was acting so violently toward me. Now she's coming after me with a crowbar. I did what any normal human being would do in this situation. Since I was already so close to my vehicle, I quickly jumped inside as she proceeds to smash said crowbar against the side of my door, causing a huge dent to form. I'm now desperately fumbling around with my keys, scared out of my mind and my wits, trying to put the keys into the ignition, and then She smashes the glass window on the back seat behind where I sat. I basically floored it out of there, immediately deciding I'm going to the police station to report that I was being attacked. Luckily, there were already some police officers standing outside drinking some coffee when they saw me running up to them, and I had this look of pure horror on my face. They then drove over to the McDonald's as I sat there crying and shaking as a female police officer comforted me. Long story short, the police would catch up with the woman, and finally they did actually arrest her, since other times they just let her go as she actually hadn't caused anyone any harm. The crazy lady was actually inside the McDonald's ranting about me when they got there. She was saying how I had gotten away, which my co-workers had relayed to me. Again, I don't know what kind of issue she had with me. I was always very professional, albeit sometimes scared with what she would say to me. I ended up resigning from that McDonald's a month later, and I started working at a Costco in the deli section, where I'm still at today. So much nicer here, as the area is a lot less sketchy, and people are actually really nice to me. So anyway, that's my scary story of the time that I had to deal with a crazy lady who wanted me dead. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder, go ahead and check down below the video and just double check to make sure you're subscribed. I've been getting a lot of comments recently of people telling me that they've been getting unsubscribed from my channel and that they haven't been notified of my uploads. And it's a shame because I know so many of you enjoy these videos, but then you never get notified of my videos because again YouTube either doesn't notify you or they unsubscribe you, so just double check. But yeah, let's continue on with these scary stories. 1997 was a pretty rough year for me. I was fresh out of high school with only my mother and twin siblings who were 10 at the time by my side. My father had passed away of cancer, not even being able to see me graduate. It was rough on my mom since she was having to work extra just to be able to pay for everything. I told my mom that I wanted to help her out as well, so I started working at McDonald's, first as part-time, but then eventually I got full-time when I became a manager. Now, while I do have some stories of when I was a manager there, there's one story in particular that stands out the most when I was just about 3 months into the job. The night I was working had been going by fairly routine. I recall it had been raining that night, and I was at that moment in the restroom just finishing up using the toilet. I flushed. I heard the door to the restrooms open, and somebody was speaking random gibberish. At first I thought it was a couple of the local teenagers that like to come to the McDonald's and act immature, but when I opened the bathroom stall, it was one of the homeless men that would hang out in the area and ask me and others for money. He never really bothered me up to that point, so I just gave him a nod of acknowledgement as he stopped speaking and now walked over to the sink to wash his hands as well. I remember saying something like, "Nice night we're having," or something like that to break the awkward silence, and he just dead-on looks into my eyes and says, "I didn't ask for your opinion." Rude, but whatever. I guess he was just having a bad night. It happens to all the best of us. I'm now blow-drying my hands and he walks up behind me, and I think, he's just waiting to do the same thing. But then, I swear to you, as I'm not paying attention, I feel something poke on my back, and the guy whispers to me, "I got a knife against your back. Don't you dare make any sort of sudden movements, and do as I say." Naturally, when someone says they have a weapon up against your back, you're going to get all these questions that suddenly enter your head. Is he serious? And if so, what does he want with me? I remember nervously laughing and saying, "Haha, yeah right dude, shut up." I turned around and he now grabs my wrist, and then I swear to you, he pushes a small switchblade up to my face and tells me to stop squirming or he was going to stab me in the neck. I'm a fairly small built guy for my age, 5'8", 160 pounds, against this 6', 180-pound male. If I even tried fighting back, surely I was going to be in for it, but it's like something in me took over. I guess fight or flight, and I chose fight, because without thinking, with all of my might, I clenched my fist and punched him straight on in the neck as hard as I could. The recoil causes him to let go of me and step back a few feet as I now take the opportunity to exit the restroom as I bump into, of all people, 2 police officers, presumably going to use the restroom. Thank the heavens above, I didn't even get a chance to say much other than, "Man with a knife in the restroom." I now make a run for it as I remember the police officers backing up and taking out their guns and shouting commands at the restroom door saying, "Drop the knife." It was a standoff for about 2 or 3 minutes, but eventually the door slowly opens and the guy in the restroom throws the knife out and surrenders. Thank God there was nobody else in the restroom then, because I truly believe he could have taken somebody hostage. To keep a long story short, they handcuff him and they take him away, but not before I remember the homeless man staring me down with a look of pure evil and hatred. I would continue to work there for a few more years, eventually becoming a manager, as I mentioned before, but I never did see that guy again. Safe to say, had things not gone down the way they did, who knows what might have happened to me. All of this California rain that we've been getting pounded with reminds me of an event that happened back in 2001 when I went to McDonald's after I got out late from work. I just pulled up into the parking lot of said McDonald's, and almost immediately I got approached by a homeless man who was asking if I had some extra cash on me because he wanted to buy food. I told him as long as it was for food, then I had no problem getting it for him, and we now walked inside as he had a huge smile across his face. He ordered a Big Mac with fries and a drink, and I got my usual order of chicken nuggets. After ordering, he properly introduced himself. His name was Don. We struck up a conversation talking about how he had lost his son and his wife in a car accident a couple of years prior, and how he had been homeless now for the last 3 months. I felt really bad for him, and I did my best to give him some words of encouragement, telling him of all the great programs that are out there for people that had fallen on tough times. He once again thanked me for those kind words, as well as for his meal I'd purchased for him. He told me about how I was the first person to have ever done something so nice for him now that he was homeless, and that most people either ignored him or gave him money and didn't want to speak. I told Don it was no problem, and now before we knew it, our food was ready. Now, seeing as I was taking this food to go home, Don asked me if it would be cool if he could walk with me to my car, as from there he was going to go to the little shelter he had set up. I asked him why he didn't prefer eating in the restaurant, and he responded by saying, "I get a lot of people who stare at me and give me funny faces, so I feel uncomfortable eating in there." I said, "Okay," and we now start exiting the McDonald's, and we enter the parking lot. And here's when things are about to take a turn further downright horrifying, as in our lives, both mine and Don's, are about to change forever. We're just casually walking when all of a sudden we hear somebody yelling behind us alongside the roar of a car engine. Don turned around at this point, and before I even get a chance to do the same thing and react, he pushes me with all his might, which causes me to go flying and land in a nearby bush. You might ask yourself, why? Why would he do this? We seem to have hit it off like a couple of long-lost brothers. Well, Don didn't do this to try and hurt me on purpose. He did it to save my life. You see, because as all of this is happening in slow motion, I see Don's body ragdoll as it gets hit by an SUV and then falls limp on the concrete next to me. Seconds after that, I hear a loud bang, and then I see the SUV that hit him crash into a nearby light post. Sparks from said light post now begin sparking down below as I see smoke begin to fume out of the car that crashed. Well, okay, let's slow down a little bit because I just described so much in just a short time. So once I realize the extent to what I just witnessed, I now get up and quickly make my way over to Don, who was struggling to breathe, and I start to see some blood begin to come out of him. I was now fighting back tears at this point and catching myself visibly shaking as people from inside the McDonald's, and even from outside, are running over to come and help. Dawn was hurt pretty badly, but luckily of all places, there was a nurse who was waiting in the drive-thru of the McDonald's who ended up coming over to help as police were being called. The guy who had been driving the SUV, from what I remember, somehow was barely scratched by the accident that he had got himself into, and I could see that he started to freak out, saying that he hadn't seen the guy and how he was sorry, etc., etc. Well, in that moment, my main concern was for Dawn. He was slipping in and out of consciousness and having a hard time breathing, but luckily after what seems like an agonizing eternity, the paramedics and the police arrive and they get Dawn into the back of an ambulance. I asked the paramedics which hospital they were going to, and they told me that they were going to take him to the nearby hospital. Luckily, it's very close to the McDonald's. It was less than 5 minutes away. Well, I'm happy to report that Dawn would make a recovery from the freak accident, although he did have to get a couple of surgeries, and he ended up needing to walk with a cane. That random evening that we met each other brought us together like long-lost brothers, as I mentioned we were. I worked with Dawn after he made a recovery to get him a little job, and he even cleaned up from the street drugs he had been using, and eventually he got himself a small home. Dawn would pass away in January of 2019 at the age of 74 of natural causes. I'll be perfectly frank with all of you. I still miss Dawn to this day. He was a genuine human being, and he did have his faults, just like everyone else, but he did his best to live a good life, and I'm glad I was able to at least be part of some of it. As for whatever happened to the guy who ran into him, I did end up finding out that he was under the influence of alcohol that night and drove into the McDonald's parking lot, hitting Dawn in the process. Thank God it wasn't at an even faster speed, because that would have killed him. Anyway, I hope you can continue to rest easy, my friend, and I hope that the creepy fox can share this story as a reminder of memento mori. It's an old saying which means know your mortality. We all have an expiration date on this planet. There's nothing we can do to change that. But there is one thing that you can do. Live your life to the fullest. Don't take it for granted, and remind your loved ones how much they mean to you. The McDonald's I used to work at back in the early 2000s in Detroit was quite notorious for getting a lot of drunks at like 2 or 3 a.m. They would often come in to get their fix of french fries and hamburgers. Because we would often get a lot of them, it also meant that we had to deal with a lot of creepy incidents with female co-workers being harassed by drunk male customers. My manager Marcus was always making sure to keep a lookout for these creeps to protect us. Well, one night, I was working at that McDonald's would prove to be different from the rest because of just how things went from bad to worse in the blink of an eye. It was during a quiet moment of foot traffic when the McDonald's was empty, and after getting bombarded by a bunch of partying college students from the nearby bars, I'm just standing around talking to my co-worker Nancy. She was older than me in her early 50s, and she was pretty much like a mother to everybody there. All of a sudden, a man in a hoodie enters the McDonald's and just starts ranting at us for no reason whatsoever. He was going on about how he had just recently lost his job. His wife had left with his 2 kids, and now the wife was trying to take everything that he owned. We listened to the guy as my manager came out to ask him to relax and calm down, and just like that, in a blink of an eye, like I told you about earlier, this crazed, deranged man pulls out a gun and then starts waving it in the air and saying he was going to shoot up the place in pure anger, and then he was going to go after his wife. Naturally, when we heard that, we all went cold, and shivers went down our spine as we feared for our lives. I was too shocked to say anything, but Nancy, bless her heart, in a calm and collected fashion, talks to the man and tells him how it's not worth it and that everything was going to be okay. The guy was still pretty angry as he continued to wave the gun around, and one of the cooks in the back had just called the police to report what was happening. Nancy and my manager are still trying their best to be brave and de-escalate the situation, I still couldn't say anything because I was so scared, but after much convincing, the man relaxes and then proceeds to drop the gun to the ground and then starts crying. Police had arrived at this point, and he starts saying how he was sorry he had done this to us and that he just wanted somebody to listen to him. The police, with their guns drawn, soon come in to put the man into handcuffs, and the tense moments are finally brought to a close. I had trouble sleeping for the following weeks, and when I saw Nancy again, I asked her how in the world she could have been so brave when I myself was so scared and I couldn't move. She said that she wasn't sure herself, but she does think that having kids and having dealt with problems in her life before, she was able to find some sort of relation to the man in that moment to be able to have a one-on-one with him in order to calm him down. That's what I loved and respected so much about Nancy. She was a true role model who looked after every single person that came into her life. I lost touch with her when I eventually moved away, but it's like I said before, I will never forget this night, nor will I ever forget Nancy. Right now, it's just my son, age 7, and myself, as my wife had passed away about 6 months ago. I'm still pretty devastated by it, but I just wanted to say how thankful I am to your Creepy Fox podcast. It has helped me in much more ways than you can possibly imagine, so thank you very much. Speaking on the Creepy Fox podcast, here is a quick creepy story for you that actually just happened to me last week. I had gotten off of work, and I was now going to pick up my son from my mom's house. However, I wanted to cheer him up since I knew he was pretty down that day, so I drove over to McDonald's to get him a Happy Meal. I got into the drive-thru lane, and after I finished my order, I moved up and there are 3 cars ahead of me. I was listening to some classic rock, not really paying attention to my surroundings, and then all of a sudden, I hear a pounding on my right side at the passenger side door. I look, and there's this random guy with blood all over his shirt, holding a large knife and acting like a maniac. It was quite the interesting sight for sure, and it didn't help that he went over to my side of the car, and now he started pounding on the window next to me and telling me to let him in because aliens were after him. Those were his words. I could now get a better look at him and I could hear him better now that I turned down the volume, and poor guy was lost. I felt bad, but then I remember he's holding a large knife and he could potentially try stabbing somebody. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my cell phone and called for the local police. Well, it seems like an eternity I'm on the phone, but he tries pulling at the door handle, and then I hear him say he was going to cut all of my intestines out and then use them as a jump rope. So much for the aliens. Well, clearly the people in front of me were scared because they just drove away, and finally deciding I had enough myself, I did the same thing too. Luckily at this point, as I'm exiting the parking lot, the police were just pulling in. I also didn't pay, so I just went over to a different McDonald's and bought food there. I heard from a friend that works at one of the stores near the McDonald's that the guy was on drugs and the police were able to apprehend him without much issue. Quite a crazy incident, that's for sure. But anyway, that was my story submission. Again, thank you Creepy Fox for everything you do for us. And thank you for giving me hope and inspiration, seeing all that you've been going through, as it's giving me strength not to give up, as you've shown your strength as well. I send you blessings, my friend. And to everyone out there, thank you, and blessings to you as well. I was 23 at the time, and I was living in an apartment complex with my boyfriend in my city's downtown area in 2013. There were plenty of shopping centers around us, which included stores like Marshall's, Best Buy, Target, and your typical fast food places like McDonald's and Panda Express. Anyway, it was about 9 p.m. and I was playing some video games with a couple of my female friends while talking via Xbox Live. and the talk of food had come up. We had decided to stop in one of the safe rooms in the game while my other two friends, Julie and Erica, are warming up some food in their homes respectively. I was going to warm something up to eat, but when I went over to the kitchen to grab some leftovers from the other night, it had somehow gone bad and it spoiled. It was a shame since I was going to be saving it for that night. I'm a night owl, so I normally don't eat during the daytime since I'm usually sleeping. So I came up with my options since my boyfriend had just left to go to work and he couldn't just bring me something to eat at the time. So I just decided the heck with it. I'm going to put on my sneakers and make a quick jog on over to the McDonald's that's in the shopping center across the way from my apartment complex. I asked my friends if they didn't mind waiting for me, and they said it was not a problem. We can just leave the game on and take a break, and then we can continue with the level when I came back. So I grabbed a light sweater, put on said sneakers, and I made my way over to that McDonald's. It was quite busy at the time. Now it's closer to 9:30 p.m., but I had my order placed and ticket in hand as I waited for my meal to be ready. As I was looking down at my phone, I happened to feel a tap on my shoulder. I looked up from my phone to see what was going on, and I now face a random middle-aged man I'd never met before. He apologizes for interrupting me and asks for my name. I just gave him a random made-up one from the top of my head, and then he starts to compliment my eyes and my ginger-colored hair. I awkwardly thanked him for his words, and I continue to look up the screen to check on the status of my order, and then he just randomly asks me, "Are you doing anything later this night?" I told him I had plans, to which he then responds by asking me if I had a boyfriend. I told him I did, and this does seem to get him to back off. However, something, I don't know what it was, perhaps some kind of sixth sense, was telling me not to keep my eyes off of him. I just had these really bad vibes that he was secretly up to something, and he was waiting for me to let my guard down. Anyway, he stepped away from me, heading closer to the cash register since his order was up next, and I sighed a breath of relief since he then walked out of my sight. My order was up 5 minutes later, and now with my meal in hand, I exit the McDonald's and look up ahead toward my apartment complex, ready to have my first meal of the day, and excited to get back to playing some more games. "Hey, wait up for me," I hear to my side, looking to see the same man from inside the McDonald's who was asking me all those random questions as he pulled up to me in his truck, blocking my way. What's up?" I asked him in a nervous tone. "I can give you a ride home. You shouldn't be walking alone at night by yourself. There are a lot of creeps out here." As if this middle-aged man wasn't being a creep himself. "Nah, I'm good. I appreciate the offer though. Please, I insist. It's not a bother at all. I love helping out young women like yourself." I was getting pretty annoyed at this point because I quite literally just live across the street and want to be left alone. So with a more firm tone, I told him, "Look man, beat it. I already told you I'm not interested in being helped." Big mistake. That guy took that extremely personal and things got super scary. "What did you say to me?" He then calls me the B word and opens his car as he attempts to step outside to stop me. I got super scared at that point since the tone of his voice, as well as the look in his eyes, made him appear as if he was about to attack me. Luckily, I did see that the light had turned green up just ahead of me, so I said whatever and I start running as I can hear the guy telling me to come back. Unfortunately for me, in my effort to get away from that creep, I ended up tripping on a part of the sidewalk that had been fixed since a recent earthquake that had happened a few months prior, and so I went flying face down to the concrete. I didn't have a drink with me since I was going to be drinking water I had at home, but my bag of food ended up falling down to the floor below. A miracle though, that it didn't come out of the bag, but that wasn't my main concern right now. Although I was very thankful I hadn't been seriously injured from my trip, I had been followed, because in these moments as I'm recollecting myself and trying to get my senses back, some lights flashed behind me. Ugh, great. The guy from the McDonald's had speed run his way over to me, and now he rolled down his window, and Now he's demanding I get inside the car. "You're hurt. Let me take you to the hospital so you can get checked up on." The guy was seriously not giving up, I'll give him that. Now furious more than anything, I flipped him off and told him to get lost, and again I hear him get angry. "What did you say to me?" he says as he pulled his truck up closer to the curb to park, and then he turned his vehicle off in order to come after me yet again. At this point, I didn't care if he would find out I lived here, since where else could I go? I booked it yet again, making sure to be careful of where I was stepping, and I make it toward the apartment entrance, where this guy is still chasing me and saying he was going to teach me a lesson once he got his hands on me. Luckily, he needed a fob key in order to enter this part of the apartment, so I had that advantage for myself, and I quickly get inside since I did have a lead on him. I finally managed to catch my breath as I looked back at him through the glass windows, and I can see his face is completely red. I could actually just make out certain words he was saying, but obviously I couldn't hear them, and he makes a motion as if saying that he wasn't done with me just yet, and this wasn't going to be the last time I would see him. Well, safe to say, I didn't leave my apartment complex alone after that, and about a year later, we moved across the country since my boyfriend had gotten an amazing job opportunity. I never did see that creep again, and I hope I never do, because I have some pepper spray with his name waiting for him, just in case he tries anything funny. This comes from the perspective of a female who at the time was 23 years old. Now, I got to find exactly which episode of the Creepy Fox podcast this was in. Maybe one of you remember which episode I'm referring to exactly, but I know you covered a story from the McDonald's that's on Harbor Boulevard, across the street from Disneyland in Anaheim, California. Well, I too had a scary thing happen to me back in 2019 when I was there at that specific McDonald's. Here's what went down. So a good friend of mine had given me a complimentary ticket for Disneyland as a birthday present, since she rarely goes with her own family anyway and didn't want the ticket to go to waste. Thus, I spent my whole day going on rides, eating snacks like churros, popcorn, and others, and then ending my evening there by watching the fireworks show. Once it was over, I called my dad and I told him to meet me at the McDonald's that's across the street in about an hour or so he could go ahead and pick me up. That gave me plenty of time to go to one of the shops on Main Street so I could go ahead and pick up some candies to take home for my little brother and my parents too. I spent about 15 minutes doing that, and no more than another 15 minutes, I made it to the McDonald's, which if you've ever been to that one, then you know how busy it is all day. I was actually feeling a bit hungry as the last time I had ate was around 2 p.m. So I said, what the heck, I'll order myself a hamburger, fries, and a Sprite to go. I ordered and then got a call from my dad saying that he was going to be running a little bit late since there was quite a bit of traffic, so to just please be patient. It's fine, I told him, since I'm still waiting for my food anyway. Fast forward another 10 minutes, my food is good to go, and I grab it and choose to sit outside on one of the empty tables since it's pretty hectic in there. I'm actually pretty sure that they were all empty because it was freezing outside, and I was the only one crazy enough to sit out there. Regardless, I now proceed to look at all the photos I'd taken earlier to kill some time. Meanwhile, my dad gets there to the McDonald's. No more than 5 minutes after staring at my phone, I feel the table move, and I feel someone get close to me, followed by the smell of really bad BO. I looked away from my screen, and it's this random homeless man that's just staring into my eyes and asking if I had some extra cash I could give him. I told him, sure, why not, and I gave him the last $5 I had on me, hoping that he was going to leave me alone. But instead he throws the $5 in my face, and he says, "What do I look like? Do you think $5 is enough?" This guy's attitude, I'll tell you. I got so mad because I know there are genuine people out there that are homeless that are really nice and they've fallen on hard times, but to be so inconsiderate that I gave him $5 and he just threw it in my face? I mean, it was all the cash I had on me. Well, at that point, I said I was done being nice, so I grab my food and leave the table area in order to walk across the way from me so I could wait on the other side of the McDonald's. The creep follows me there too, and he's starting to grow agitated that I'm ignoring him, and he wants me to give him even more money. I'm reminding him I have no more, and then he starts to hurl insults at me, saying how I have enough money to buy myself my own food, but not for him. Not gonna lie, he was starting to grow quite violent. A nice man who had walked out of the McDonald's with his family did overhear all the insults the man was giving me and told the homeless man to get lost or he was going to call the cops. The last thing I remember the jerk saying was something about how I should be ashamed of myself for having others come to my aid and fight my own battles. But the one line that stays cemented in my head was when he told me he was going to stab my eyes out of their sockets and eat them for breakfast. Joking or not, I don't know what he might have been on, since the only logical explanation I could think of was he had to have been on drugs. I'm not too sure myself. Anyway, the guy eventually walked away, and that family kept me company as my dad arrived about 3 minutes later, not having a single clue to the creepy incident I just had to deal with. Now I know this probably is a bit more on the tame side to what you might hear on the Creepy Fox podcast, but it is true when they say McDonald's does bring out quite the collection of human beings. Lots of good, but then lots of bad and straight up weird. I just hope all of you out there don't have to deal with people like this. It's just a shame how you can be having yourself a really good day, only for it to get completely ruined by some random, violent nobody. My girlfriend and I were on a road trip to visit my parents, who lived 10 hours away from us during the week of Thanksgiving in the year 2000. We stopped at a McDonald's along the way as we were getting pretty hungry and we hadn't seen any signs for food in quite some time. This small rest area, which was in bum middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, had only said McDonald's and a gas station, which at the time I remember being empty. We went inside the McDonald's and sat in there for about 20 minutes, taking our time as we listened to the music playing and watched the cars driving by on the road in front of us. Something about it was just extremely therapeutic, or maybe it was all the sugar from the soda making us feel really good. Whatever the case, there are a few other customers who are also minding their own business too, and out from seemingly nowhere, this heavy-set man who has a bandana covering up his face walks inside the McDonald's and makes an order. My girlfriend pointed him out, not that I didn't already have some strange feeling about him, and we kinda just kept an eye on him as he takes his seat at the table next to us and strikes up a random conversation. "Hey, how are you two doing? It's a nice evening for a drive, wouldn't you say?" Again, he still has that bandana on his face, and we're both getting these really bad vibes from him because he's looking at my wife more than he should. I just asked him straight up what he was doing and what he wanted, and then he says something that made us both uncomfortable. "I've been traveling across the United States looking for good-looking women like your girlfriend. I work with a talent agency in the adult entertainment business. Would you two be interested?" "Absolutely not," we both said, almost at the same time. And the guy now starts telling us how we can make a lot of money in a short amount of time, and how he has really good connections with higher-ups that he was friends with. We both told him no, and I told him to beat it, and he now goes from cool and collected to straight up furious. "I'm giving you an offer of a lifetime. Be thankful, as this opportunity only comes once." Whatever, buddy. Maybe in your twisted fantasy of thinking, but not for us. We both start to get up and tell him to have a nice night, and can you believe it? The dude follows us outside of the McDonald's. He kept arguing and trying to make up all these random excuses, but it's when we get to our car, when he does something that we will never forget. He straight up takes out a huge knife, but then tells us to get out of the car and that he's not finished talking to us. Well, we sure were finished talking to him. I pressed my foot on the gas, and we floored it out of there, never looking back as we left him quite literally in the dust. We have never gone back to that McDonald's again, not that we've had any reason to do so, and as a bit of research, I remember after we got back home, I tried to see if perhaps there might have been something in the news of something similar happening to anyone else, but there was nothing. That was why I've come here to the Creepy Fox. I know he's got a lot of people who listen to these scary stories videos, and I also love his narrations too. So I'm sharing this in hopes that maybe there's somebody out there who has more information. Or maybe, just maybe, I know the chances are like finding a needle in a haystack. But perhaps you were one of those people in that McDonald's that day, and you remember a guy in all denim, wearing a bandana to cover his face, harassing a young couple in their mid-20s. I don't know, just thought I would give it a shot. Anyway, that's my scary and creepy McDonald story. So, I went to LAX to go and pick up my cousin Maria, who was visiting me for a couple of weeks from her hometown in Guadalajara. She was tired because she had stayed up the whole night before, too excited for the flight, but she was also really hungry and hadn't ate in almost 12 hours. I asked her what she wanted and I told her it was on me, and she just said that she wouldn't mind getting something at the McDonald's near my house. She's visited before, so she knows exactly which one. I asked her if she was sure since, there are so many other fast food places. But she said, yeah, that's fine. She'll get something breakfast related. So with the plan set, we spent about an hour driving back to my city and we get to the McDonald's. Of course, the line was super long outside. It was the breakfast rush, I guess. Well, we looked through the windows from our car and we see it's pretty empty in there. Thus, we make the decision to just go in and grab our food since it seems like it's faster that way. We made our order of Egg McMuffins and some hash browns and orange juice, and we sat at one of the tables that's by the soda dispenser as we waited. Nearby, there was a man, I would say he was in his mid-40s, who was reading a newspaper and drinking a coffee. He was friendly and said hello, and we did the same thing back, and he continued with his newspaper reading. Well, a few minutes of waiting and some more customers there to order their food. A man in his early 50s comes over to us and then just straight up says to our face, "In case nobody has told you to already, you're both really sexy. I'd love to go down on one of you, if not, both at the same time." I did my best not to barf right there and then, as my cousin Maria, who speaks and understands perfect English, tells him to screw off. He now raises his voice, grabs Maria's wrist and tells us to stop playing so hard to getting closer to sniff her hair. The man who was reading the newspaper tells this creep to get lost and to let go of my cousin, to which he does, and then this causes a frenzy. "Shut up. This is none of your business," the creep said to newspaper guy. "Clearly it is. You're harassing these two young ladies who are trying to go about their day, and then you put your hands on one of them? Shame on you." One thing leads to another, and the 50-year-old creep actually tries to punch the younger guy, but he manhandles him so easily, as we would find out shortly then after that he was actually a Marine who had been deployed in the Middle East in the past, explained his training. Anyway, what makes this story a bit more scary was that there was a cop who had just gotten inside the McDonald's when this was happening, and while we were there watching, the officer asked the creep if he had any weapons on him. He said that he did have a small utility knife on him that he carries in his jacket for work. Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but what if he had used that knife on one of us? Or maybe on nice Marine newspaper guy who saved us? Not to say he might have, as he claimed he wouldn't have used it, but to have gotten so heated in those moments, you just never know. Anyway, the man had grabbed Maria's wrist so hard that it actually bruised a little bit, but Maria, however, just decided not to press any charges, and we moved on with our lives, never encountering that creep again. So my friend and I decided to head to McDonald's one evening. That way we could get some McFlurries and enjoy the wonderful and peaceful evening. The time was approximately 11 p.m. As we sat there, we noticed a man enter the McDonald's with a couple of duffel bags. He placed them on the ground and then began talking to himself. as he held a coffee cup. For the next few minutes, he went in and out of the McDonald's and kept saying something about the train station. Around the 10th time he entered and exited, he went over to some dumpsters and stayed there. I should note that the staff that had been working at that hour were all female, and they were all getting pretty nervous. We are guys, by the way. Anyway, two of the girls asked us if we could stay a little bit longer, going further to state that they would give us each a free mega meal, which consisted of 2 Big Macs and French fries. So we agreed as we could see the distress on their faces. A minute or two later, I told Logan to lock the doors on the other side of the McDonald's. I ended up locking the doors near where the train station guy exited, and I could see him continuing to walk back and forth. I soon returned to the front lobby where the manager asked me to look inside the duffel bags. I'm not even joking. Inside were some Tech 9s, pistols, and some duct tape with handcuffs. The other had more or less the same, only that it also had some drugs too. Very scary. With that, we quickly made a call to the RCMP. As we waited there on lockdown, the man began to knock on the front door, demanding we let him in. Thank God the police arrived shortly after and were able to take him away. It turned out that he was wanted by law enforcement in 3 different cities and 4 provinces. He had broken out of a psych hospital and had some zap straps on him. Apparently, he had wrote in one of his books that he was planning on using that arsenal that he had acquired. A very chilling and scary thought for sure. By the way, this took place in British Columbia, Canada, just in case you're wondering. Hi there, Creepy Fox. I'm a huge fan of yours from Mexico. A couple of things I wanted to go ahead and get off my chest. 1, I enjoy the content. Keep up the great work. And 2, I've got a story to talk to you about going over my time in fast food. Since this was quite some time ago, any parts where I quote people will be based off of my memory. With that said, let me give you some background context. I'm male, and I was 19 years old. This was around the year 2000 in the city of Veracruz. I just started working at a McDonald's, starting off as a typical cashier. Eventually, I moved on to becoming a cook and then an assistant manager, but this will go over my time as a cashier. Anyway, it was a random evening around midnight and the store had been pretty slow. I was currently on my 15-minute break and I stepped outside to get some fresh air. Trust me, when you work in fast food, you do get used to the smell, but since I was new, it did get to me. While I sat there reading a book, I couldn't help but notice 3 men at the corner of our McDonald's. They were acting very suspiciously. I don't know how to best describe it, but something about them just seemed off. They were looking into the windows and were fiddling around with the back doors. At one point, I almost considered talking to them and seeing what was up, but I figured they were just bored. Once my break was over, I head back inside and joined my coworker, who was refilling the soda fountain. About 2 minutes in, we hear 2 loud gunshots, followed by men shouting. We both turned around, and now there are 3 men in ski masks with guns. They're demanding we put our hands up and remain silent. We do as they say, while nothing but panic and fear began to fill our heads. Bear in mind, the store was empty of customers, and it was just myself and 4 other co-workers in total. One of them now speaks to us in Spanish, but I'll go ahead and write it out in English so you can understand. Okay, listen up. This is a robbery. All of you are going to follow what we say. The one who spoke then gathers us into a back room and now tells us each to sit down and keep quiet. Meanwhile, we can hear the other 2 scrambling to open the cash registers. This goes on for about 30 seconds, and finally we hear them shout, "Okay, we're all good. Let's get out of here." The next moments were like something straight out of a nightmare. Before leaving, this masked man points his gun towards our group. As we begged and cried not for him to shoot at us, he then points it above our heads and starts firing toward the shelves, causing fresh produce to fall everywhere. He then leaves us. Meanwhile, we fear he might come back to finish the job, but he never did. We must have been there for a solid 3 minutes because none of us dared to move. Finally, I had the courage to take a peek out the door, and I could see the store was empty. In summary, we ended up calling the police and they show up about 20 minutes later. Talk about taking their time. While they arrived, we had to explain to some customers that had shown up that we were just robbed and we couldn't help them at the moment. Sadly, we didn't have security cameras, which made identifying the criminals that much more difficult. Even with my description I gave of those three I saw outside the McDonald's before the robbery took place, there wasn't any evidence that showed they could have been the ones responsible, since I couldn't see their face. Though, thinking about it today, it's obvious it was them. To this day, as far as I know, they were never caught and brought to justice, and they made off with about 19,000 pesos, or about $1,000 US. McDonald's, a place with happy meals, happy smiles, and happy times. What could possibly go wrong? Everything could go wrong. One moment you're with your family enjoying a nice warm hamburger with some french fries and a nice soft drink. Next moment, you're on your way to being kidnapped. Now let's stop for a second before I spoil too much. It was the late 1990s and I was in the 3rd grade. My family and I had gone on a road trip across the United States and we were trying to see all the sights people dreamed of. Yellowstone National Park, Mount Rushmore, the Four Corners, etc. It was a lot of fun and we made a lot of stops along the way. One evening around 9ish, we had stopped at a rest area in Wyoming. It was essentially in the middle of nowhere and it was right off the highway. Anyway, I should mention really quickly before continuing, it was myself, my mom, and my dad. We head into this McDonald's and I tell my dad I wanted a Happy Meal. While he ordered, both myself and my mom take a seat and we wait for him. It took about 3 minutes and as we waited, I took a look around the store. There were 2 other families with some kids who were in the play area. I wanted to go play, but I waited for my food. Fast forward about 15 minutes, and once I'm done with my food, I walk over to the play area. In the meantime, my parents were talking. All is going well, and I remember the kids and I playing for about 20 minutes. Eventually they left and it was just myself. Pretty boring and I almost considered just leaving, but I stayed a little bit longer to play on the Nintendo 64s that they kept on display so kids like myself could play on them. As I'm playing Mario Kart, I couldn't help but notice an older man walk into the room and grab one of the controllers. I would describe him as in his late 40s, slightly overweight, easily over 6 foot tall. "Hey there, kiddo. What you playing? Mind if I join?" My parents had taught me not to talk to strangers, so I did my best to ignore him, but he kept on insisting. "Don't worry, I work here. We're slow at the moment and I saw that you were on your own, so I figured I would join you." He seemed friendly and all he wanted to do was play video games, so I let him join me. After a few minutes, I remember him saying, "Hey, we got a lot more video games in the back. I'll tell you what, you can choose whichever game you want, and you can take it home. I know the owner here, he wouldn't mind." I was beyond excited. I could have the opportunity to get a free copy of any Nintendo 64 game that I wanted, but something about him seemed too good to be true. Try as he did, nothing was convincing me that he was a McDonald's employee. I mean, he didn't even have the uniform. That's why I was very cautious. Sadly, in my excitement, I had forgotten stranger danger, and so I agreed to follow him nonetheless. We start to make our way to the side door, and we open it, but then I ended up hearing my dad's voice. "Honey, it's time to go." "Where are you going?" The man froze in place when he heard my dad's voice. But here's when things got so scary. This stranger grabs a hold of me, and he begins running. I stood no chance. This guy was strong. My dad, however, like Superman, rushes toward myself and this stranger, and halfway through the parking lot, the creep decides it's better for him to let go of me. Otherwise, he would feel the full fury of an angry father. Well, I pretty much go running back toward my dad, crying as we watch the creep get into a pickup and drive away. My dad was furious that I had listened to a stranger, but that was soon followed by tears. I look back at it today, but if my kid was almost taken by someone, I would be crying too. After all, you hear about things similar to these situations, and a lot of times, they don't turn out well. Anyway, at this point, we talked to the manager and we called the police. As expected, this stranger didn't work there, and sadly, when all was said and done, he got away, and we never saw him ever again. Hi there, everyone. I hope you enjoy my creepy experience that I'm about to share with you all. This was in 2006, and I was 19 years old. I'm female. At the time, I was working at a McDonald's in the mid-Southwest. It was okay money, but it definitely wasn't worth the 30-minute drive from home just to get there. Regardless, it helped me pay for expenses with textbooks and other school-related things. So I guess there was one positive. One thing I enjoyed about my year of working there was it never got too busy. Most of the people on road trips who would stop by our rest area would normally buy snacks at the neighboring Shell station. Anyway, I normally work during the nighttime, and this evening was looking to be no different. With me was a fellow cashier and the cook in the back. Apart from a couple of families who were enjoying their meal, the night was pretty boring, and I remember I was mopping the store minding my own business. Out of nowhere, however, an older man approaches me, and he wants to know if he could have my phone number. Bear in mind, I don't know who this man was, and from the looks of it, he didn't seem to be with other families. I'm sorry, but I didn't quite catch that. What was it you wanted? I said, I want your number. You're really cute. Maybe you'd like to ride with me across the country. Yes, because I was going to quit my job and marry this random stranger and then go cross-country road tripping. I'm obviously being sarcastic, but I tell him I wasn't allowed to do that while I was working. Apparently, this didn't seem to be a sufficient answer, as he replies back with, "Oh, well, what time do you get off of work? I'll go ahead and wait for you outside. Maybe you'll change your mind by then." He then walks out of the McDonald's. It was pretty weird, and at first I thought my co-workers were behind this little prank. However, they tell me they had no idea what I was talking about. A bit unnerved, I soon put it in the back of my mind and I go about the rest of my evening. Fast forward to midnight and I would finally be heading home in about 30 minutes. Before leaving, I offered to throw the trash in the dumpster out back. So that's what I started to do. I go out through the front of the store with a trash bin on a dolly and I make my way to the back. This is when, in my peripheral vision, I am able to see a figure approaching me. I didn't really give much attention until I've thrown the trash out and I turn around. When I do, it's the same greasy, overweight delivery driver I just talked to a few hours ago. "I waited for you, just like I told you. Did you perhaps change your mind?" I never responded. Instead, I pushed past him, but I don't get too far as I feel something. He grabs my arm and stops me in my place. I said, "Perhaps you changed your mind? Come on, follow me. We have so many fun things we can do in my car." Well, that wasn't happening, but this guy was admittedly strong, and he outweighed me by at least 200 pounds. He now begins to pull me toward the parking lot, but we don't even get halfway there until I hear my co-worker. "What do you think you're doing? Let her go now." This creep freaks out. Not only does he let go of me, but he takes off running, jumping into his large delivery vehicle and driving away. I was so frightened by the whole ordeal, I hugged my co-worker for a good 5 minutes while I continued to cry. Apparently he had noticed I was taking longer than usual, and so he steps outside to see where I was. That's when he saw what was taking place. Anyway, he assures me I was safe as our other co-worker, the cook, calls the police. Once they got there 20 minutes later, I gave them a description along with the vehicle. Unfortunately, the security cameras were terrible and thus they never were able to properly identify him. To this day, he's still out there, but I just hope he's a changed man. Okay, admittedly this didn't happen while I was working, but it did happen a few minutes after. Just for a quick background, I work for a McDonald's. It was around 8:45 p.m. and I was just clocking out catching up with a coworker who hadn't shown up in about a week. Once the conversation was over, she walks me over to my car. As we started to approach my Mini Cooper, I was able to see somebody trying to fiddle around with the passenger side door. "Excuse me, but what are you doing?" I exclaimed, annoyed by this sudden stranger. The man stops in place and then puts his hands into his pockets before saying, "I was just admiring it. Sorry to be a bother to you." I look at my coworker and I tell her I would take care of it. Meanwhile, she heads back in to return to her shift. "Okay, well, I gotta get going. Have a good night." I start getting closer, but then he interrupts me. "Give me all the money you have." I looked at him with confusion. Was he serious? "I'm sorry, what?" I say, trying to act stupid. "You heard me. Give me some money." Okay, first of all, I don't even get the chance to get another word out because the man takes out a gun and starts waving it toward me. Well, darn, I was in quite a load of you-know-what. "I'm sick of people like you not taking me seriously. Hand over your wallet." Thankfully, I was far enough where if he happened to fire a shot at me, I would have been able to dodge. However, I didn't want to take that risk. I take out my wallet, which really only had about $30, as well as my debit card, and I toss it over. He picks it up and I book it back inside, sweating profusely and on the verge of having a panic attack. My manager happens to see my concern, and after I told him about what happened, he heads outside while I call the police. Here's the twist. It turned out that a couple of police officers were just pulling into our McDonald's. I run up to them and explain the situation and then give them a description. They then search the immediate area, where the police find the man 15 or so minutes later in the process of trying to rob an older couple. I got my wallet back, and I treated those police officers to some hamburgers. Thus, in the end, things turned out okay, even if it meant I was given a scare of a lifetime. Edit. I later learned that the pistol was a prop and it wasn't even real. To think, I let a toy get to me. To be fair, I had no clue. I used to work for a McDonald's in Tijuana, Mexico during the mid-2000s as a part-time job as I tried to earn some extra income to pay off some loans. Working at McDonald's isn't really anything special, and after roughly a year and a half, I quit for better employment. Now, the reason why I want to mention my time with McDonald's is because there was one evening that forever has fueled my nightmares, even to this day. Occasionally, I'll have those what-if sort of dreams, where I get the bad ending of my experience, and I wake up out of my sleep, sweating and heart racing. I hate when that happens, but I do like to talk about it sometimes because, in a way, it helps me realize that I did nothing wrong, and I was very brave for handling things the way I did. So, enough anticipation. There I was. It was about 11 p.m., and it's myself at the cash register, 2 cooks in the back, and some patrons enjoying their late-night hamburgers and french fries at one of the tables in the back. As I looked up at the TV above me, I believe it was the local news or something, I ended up hearing the front door open. It did take me a second to move my head toward the individual that entered, but when I saw them, I sort of did a double take. Here's this guy with a motorcycle helmet on, his face being covered by the tinted visor, wearing the complete and typical motorcycle's outfit, alongside a heavy-set jacket. Bear in mind, this was during the summertime, and even at that hour, it was still pretty humid and in the upper 70s, from my best memory. This would put it at about 80-something. Anyways, that's not really important, other than the fact I did find him wearing such heavy clothing a bit off. The man approached the register, and then without even saying a single word, reaches into his pocket and hands me a little white piece of paper. Maybe he had a really big order, so he wrote it down to make things easier on him. Surely, he wasn't going to give me his phone number, right? Well, with these little questions and scenarios running through my mind, and him just standing there silently, like some sort of statue, I open the note, and I start reading. Suddenly, I feel my blood run cold, and I get goosebumps across my body as the words gun and kill stand out to me. This guy was looking to rob the McDonald's, but as per his note, he said that as long as I handed over the money peacefully and without a fight, he would be on his way, and no harm would come to anyone at all. At this point, I decided to do something a bit dumb. I looked at him and I jokingly said, "Yeah, and next you're going to tell me I'm going to grow wings and fly away." Or something stupid like that. This seemed to only agitate him, and what he does next sends my anxiety levels over the limit. He brandishes a pistol that's on the inside pocket of his jacket. That was enough for me to drop the note and stop laughing. Now I start to put money into a plastic bag. Those moments felt like they went on forever, and I feared that one of the cooks in the back was going to say something and potentially get him, or I, shot. Well, what do you know? One of them does see me start to place money into a bag, and the man wearing the helmet tells him to be quiet. Of course, the cook, being the stubborn older man he was, tells me to stop with the money withdrawal, and this angers the robber. Now, instead of just flashing the gun, he takes it out full force and points it in the direction of the cook. Literal chills are taking over as I fear this was it. This was the end. I also saw at this moment as the two who had been eating their food in the back took off running out of the McDonald's, which caught the attention of the robber. I don't think he had noticed them at first, but one thing that seemed to have been going through his head was that his chances of making it out without more witnesses seeing what he was doing and cops arriving to arrest him was growing very slim. In what was a complete 180, the man suddenly takes off, running out of the McDonald's, and runs into the parking lot, disappearing behind a large wall. You bet we were super frightened and paranoid at this point as we lock ourselves in a back room and then call for the police. They arrived in about 5 minutes, and they started to do a complete scan of the local area. Unfortunately, they never caught the guy, and even with the security footage we showed them, there wasn't much they could go on, since his face and entire body was fully covered and disguised. Ultimately, I had to take a week off from work after that incident because I was so traumatized and scared from what I'd just been put through. I genuinely believed that that man was going to shoot my coworker had he not complied and backed away, and I also believed that he wasn't afraid to then go after me and everybody else had we spoken even a word. Truly, one of the most frightening experiences of my life that I hope none of you out there listening ever have to go through. Hey there, friends. I'm currently working at Subway, and let me just say, I couldn't be any more happier. It's nice because I don't have to worry about terrible hours, people, or an environment that makes you regret showing up to work. I'm mentioning these things because I want to take you back to a time when I was working at McDonald's. A McDonald's where I would learn that not every customer is a happy one. Now, in this retelling, I will be going over more than one experience, so you get more than what you bargained for. With that said, allow me to take you back to the year 2009. I was a young 18-year-old teenager, and I just got in a job working for a local McDonald's. Now, for quick mention, a lot of my friends and family tell me that I look a lot younger, while I tend to behave older. A lot of times, this ended up attracting some interesting people, as I will soon explain. Moving on. I'm the sort of person who can't just be in one spot the whole shift. I'll go crazy with boredom. Thus, on this one evening, I started to refill the drink lids. Now, I'm usually pretty good with my senses, and I know if somebody might be near me or staring right directly at me. That's why I was surprised when I feel somebody slip a business card under my arm on the drink station counter. Naturally, I was confused. So I turn around and it's this older 40-something-year-old dude that I just helped at the front counter. Something about the business card was different, however. It wasn't the professional kind you might get at a job interview or a business meeting. This thing had information that was scratched out, and it was replaced with his home and cell phone numbers. My first thought was, wow, seriously, dude? That's not happening. I pretty much threw that business card in the trash, and that was the end of that. That was just one of the creepy experiences. Another time, this giant of a man, easily over 6 feet tall, came up to me and was speaking gibberish. Not sure what his issue was, but when I leaned over to hear him better, he reached for my neck, and he almost broke it. I wish I was joking. It was really scary, and my spine did finally crack back into place 3 nights later while I was sleeping. The last encounter I want to cover was with this overnight security guard. He was actually a regular to the store and I had seen him time and time again. On this one evening, he had gone through the drive-thru about 3 times. As it turned out, he ended up calling the store, leaving all of these compliments about me. But the thing is, these so-called compliments were a lot creepier than what you might expect. I never heard the messages, mind you, since we never answered the phone. But he did leave voicemails. He wanted my phone number and even included his own. Then he went to describe some very disturbing details on what he wanted to do with me. So that was it. Eventually I quit and I moved on, getting employed at a Subway, like I mentioned in my intro. I'm just glad that I'm finally away from all that mess. Every year around Halloween, I think of the same incident that occurred to my friend and I when we were in our last year of high school. That makes us seniors. This was in 1998, and I recall it like it was just yesterday. This was on Halloween night. I was going to hang out with my best friend Justin, but before I left my home, my dad asked if I could take my little brother trick-or-treating. I asked my father why he couldn't just take him, since he had done so all the previous years, but he explains that his boss called him in and said he needed my dad at work very early, like at about 4 a.m. I sighed at this chore, and I called Justin telling him I may have to cancel our plans. Justin told me he'd keep me company, and so together with my little brother, we spent the next 2 hours trick-or-treating and walking around the neighborhoods on the other side of town. Fast forward to about 9:30 p.m. We're back at my house and are dropping off my little brother. "Hey, I'm hungry. Want to go get some McDonald's? I'll buy," Justin said. I agreed and told my mom, who was still awake, that we would be back in less than an hour. She said it was fine as long as I didn't stay out past 11. Plenty of time to grab food and just chill. The McDonald's we chose to go to was near my friend Justin's house, about a 10-minute drive from my home. Now, thinking the place would be packed, we planned on just picking up the food through the drive-thru and sitting in Justin's car, listening to the appropriately themed Halloween music that was playing on the radio. However, when we reached the street light and intersection that's next to the McDonald's, we're surprised to learn as we're waiting at the red light, it's pretty deserted. I could only see one other person through the large glass windows eating inside the restaurant, which convinced Justin and I to go in there and eat there too. Now here's when things were about to take a turn for the worse. Fast forward after we had ordered our meals of chicken nuggets and french fries. We're just chilling at one of the tables, talking and admiring how empty the restaurant is, when I got distracted by somebody pacing back and forth in the parking lot. Justin was sitting in front of me, so he didn't know what I had been looking at. "What is it?" Justin asked. I have him turn around and point toward what looks to be like a man wearing a brown paper bag that's covering his face, and he's also wearing a hoodie. There were holes for eyes and even a mouth. I remember we laughed, thinking how silly of a costume the man had chosen, and then focused our attention back to eating and telling silly jokes. Before we left, Justin had to use the restroom. Therefore, I waited for him near the front door, looking up toward the TV that's in the lobby. About 20 seconds later, I heard a door opening. Thinking it's Justin, I moved my attention away from the TV and toward the restrooms, which are near the entrance. "Don't move, kid, if you know what's good for you." The man who had the paper bag over his head is now inside the McDonald's, and he's got a large knife. As you'd expect, my first reaction was to laugh, but when he barked back at me with that deep and creepy voice, I immediately went silent. "You two, start emptying the cash registers and put whatever is in there into this bag." The cashiers do as he says, as I'm standing there too afraid to even move. I guess I was concerned that if my friend walked out of the restroom, he might scare this person and things could end really badly. Time seemed to have gone into slow motion, but I would snap out of it when I look at the front door, and I still think that somebody was looking out for me that night. But there were 2 police officers just entering the establishment. Those officers, who I guess hadn't seen what was taking place from outside the restaurant, as they had parked in the back and were unaware of our troubles, immediately changed their demeanor from laughter to seriousness and took out their guns. They then tell the man to drop the knife, who thanked the heavens above had momentarily placed the knife on the countertop to grab the bags of cash. Expecting to be part of a shootout, I'm so shocked by how quickly the man with the disguise drops the knife to the floor and then kicks it over to these police officers. Justin exits the restroom and joins me seconds later after the officers are handcuffing this man. Now, to say we were scared is beyond anything I can define. That was truly a moment in my life when I could say, yeah, nothing can really top it, and nothing has topped it ever since. Edit. We actually got on the news and talked about what we experienced with one of our local news reporters. We were the talk of our high school, and the rest of the semester we got complimented by so many of our fellow classmates, telling us how brave we were for keeping our cool. But the only people we have to thank were those police officers. I say to them, thank you, and if you're somehow hearing this story, then just know that Justin and I have never forgotten about what you did. Thank you, and blessings to you and your families. I'm a huge fan of yours, and I always listen to your stories whenever I'm playing video games. Actually, that's all I do. Thanks for your work. Anywho, let me share my story with you and all your followers. To take you back, it was around the year 2000. It was during the summer, and I was at McDonald's with my aunt and my cousins. We were having our typical get-together, eating our Happy Meals and having a good laugh. At one point, my cousins and I decided to go to the play area to play some video games. I don't know if many of you remember, but there were some McDonald's that had TVs and video game consoles that you can play. I remember the McDonald's we went to had about 4 TV stations, each connected with a Nintendo 64. Each had a different video game. I happened to choose the one that had Donkey Kong 64 in it. Anyway, we were playing for about 15 minutes when this older kid comes up to us. He was probably about 16 years old. He had his hands in his jacket pocket and seemed to be holding some sort of weapon. He then tells us to hand over all the money that we had, otherwise he was going to, and I quote, beat us up. Being a naive kid at that age, I didn't believe him. Besides, all I had was like $5 in my pocket, and really, he was wanting money from some kids? I say no along with my cousins, which ends up angering him. He now pushes me, but my cousins backed me up. As we're shouting back and forth, an employee walks over and breaks up the fight. By this point, my aunt and some other customers came to see what was going on. What he drops, it was super creepy. He takes a step back and falls over, which ends up revealing a small blade he had in his pocket. A security guard is called over and he is taken in for questioning. I guess he was part of some gang and this was his test. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We loved playing video games and all we wanted to do was be alongside fellow video game players. Thankfully, the manager walked out and complimented us on being brave. They offered us a free meal for a month, which was really awesome. So, I guess it was sort of worth it in the end. This took place in the summer of 2019. Like any adventures of teenagers, the routine was to wake up, ride bicycles, eat lunch, ride bicycles again, watch a movie to end the day, and then repeat for at least 60 days. But this one day was different. My friend and I were hungry, so we decided to stop at the local McDonald's for dinner, and that way we can bring it back to the house so we could watch a movie. At this time, we were hyped for It 2 to release and we were already prepared for Halloween. But at McDonald's, a middle-aged, short, mysterious-looking man walked into the store and sat parallel to us. We didn't think much of it at first and let it be. Once they called us for our order, we ended up leaving. When we were riding our bicycles back, Alex recognized a man in a zookeeper-like suit about 70 yards behind us. We sped up a little bit and we thought we lost him. Or so we thought. Now, Alex's house is very unique. He has a window right behind where there's a TV and you can see a lot of the neighborhood from that window. 20 minutes into our movie, we're into our goodies and Alex again points out the man from the McDonald's as he walks down the road in our direction. "You think he sees us, Alex?" "Get down," Alex said. "You think he saw us?" I stated. "Probably not. Let's check." We peeked up from the ground. Nobody there. Now, Alex's mom was home, but we didn't want to annoy her. 10 minutes later, I'm gonna go get some water from the garage. Suddenly, I look back, and the man with the sunglasses has a smile and is looking right at us. He pounds at the window, and we get Alex's mom. She doesn't believe it, and of course, when we go back, he's gone. I wasn't comfortable going home as I would have to ride my bicycle. I decided to sleep over, and this is when things really went downhill. Alex and I were still aware of the man that was still out there and could still even be on the lookout for us. At 2 in the morning, we hear a rock hit the window. "Oh no," Alex mumbled to me. We peek out the window to see nothing except the darkness of the night. But this next part is most disturbing. All of a sudden, we hear the back door open. "Oh golly," Alex said. I didn't lock the door. We armed ourselves with Nerf guns just as a precaution. Now keep in mind these are modded from the 6th grade and these things could leave a scar and travel at a fast speed. Alex is on the phone with the police and we're hiding in his room where we could get the man from 2 angles if he came in. When the police arrived, they searched the property, but nothing. They did find a butcher's knife and paper that said, "I'm not done yet," with a smiley face. We haven't heard of the man from McDonald's since, but I'll update you all if something ever comes up. So some background context for you. This was in 2010. I was on a road trip visiting family who was living in Indiana. I am originally from California. Anyway, the trip usually takes me about 2 days, and I ended up stopping about halfway. On this one adventure, I ended up stopping in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska at a Motel 6. The place was pretty quiet. There was a McDonald's and a convenience store next to me, but other than that, there is just a highway and miles upon endless miles of farmlands and dirt. When I arrived at 9 p.m., there were about 20 cars in total, but this is combined with the McDonald's, convenience store, and Motel 6. So I check in and head to my room on the 2nd story. Everything was going well. I laid in bed for about 30 minutes and was watching an episode of The Simpsons. This is when the hunger started to settle in, and my stomach was saying, "Hey, it's now time to eat." To be fair, I hadn't ate anything since the morning, and I figured I would power through to try and get as far as possible. But chicken nuggets and some french fries were sounding pretty delicious right now, so I would have a late dinner. I step out of the comfort of my motel room, and I make my walk over to the McDonald's. There were a couple of patrons enjoying their late night meals. I step in and order my meal and I wait next to the cashier box. That's when a man walks next to me with his receipt. I figured he was waiting for his meal, so I didn't pay attention to him. I will tell you one thing about him, however. This guy was massive. He was easily over 6'5", probably weighed over 300 pounds easily. Here I am, just this small 5'3", 25-year-old girl around 110 pounds. This guy could easily have been my dad. Anyway, as we stood there, he says hello and I said hello back. He then introduces himself as Robert and begins wondering what I'm doing here in the middle of nowhere. He seems friendly, so I give him my name, Zoe. He then mentions that he was a delivery driver for a big grocery store chain and he had stopped to take a break. Pretty neat, I guess. A minute later, his order is ready and he grabs his food. I then watch as he steps out of the store and heads to his delivery vehicle. Fast forward another few minutes later and my order is ready. Order number 13 for Zoe. Sweet. I grab some extra ketchup and it's now I'm the one stepping out of the store and walking over back to the motel. As I'm halfway there, I hear somebody call out to me. "Hey Zoe, wait up a second. It's the man from the McDonald's. I'll probably never see you ever again, and I don't want to miss my opportunity. It was really nice meeting you. I was wondering, do you have a Facebook? It would be really great to keep in touch with you." I told him I wasn't comfortable with giving a complete stranger I just met my information, and he sort of just backs away heading back to his vehicle. That should have been the end of the story, but there's still more to this. Fast forward an hour later and I'm starting to get ready for bed. I'm already in my pajamas and I'm just browsing the internet on my phone. That's when I hear a knock at my motel door. Well, that's strange. Who could be knocking at this time? I quietly get up and look through the peephole. It's the same man from an hour earlier, Robert from McDonald's. What did he want? My contact information? Well, I pretty much ignore his knocking, but the man isn't letting up. After about a minute, all goes quiet and he ends up leaving. A bit creepy, but I figured that was going to be it. Give it another hour and I'm awoken to what sounds like somebody trying to pick at the lock. Oh no, no way sisters, that's not happening. Quickly, I reach for the phone and I call the front desk. Hello, how can we help you? Someone's trying to break into my room. You need to send somebody quick. We're sending somebody right now. Just hold on. About 30 seconds later, I hear somebody yell in the distance, and that's followed by footsteps running from my door and presumably down the stairs. Hello in there? It's one of the motel staff. You can open the door now. I was still pretty shaken up, but when I looked through the peephole again, I could see one of the employees I had talked to a couple of hours before. He pretty much tells me there was somebody with a sharp object in their hands trying to pick at the lock. I say, what did the man look like? He now begins to describe McDonald's man detail by detail. There was a match, and to further confirm this, we can see him from the balcony as he starts to run over to one of the delivery vehicles, then drives off into the night. That was pretty much the last time I saw him. So I thought. A few days later, I was on Facebook and I noticed a one next to the friend request button. Curious, I go ahead and click on it, and there's somebody named Robert Williams wanting to be my friend. Robert? Who was Robert? The picture looked familiar. Well, one look at his profile, and I instantly now knew who it was. It showed me he was a delivery driver for Stater Brothers, and he was 47 years old. I pretty much deleted the request right there and then, and blocked him entirely. So that was the last time that I ever heard from this Robert Williams. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to today's video. If this is the first time you listen to one of these podcasts, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified of any and all future uploads here on the Creepy Fox. Also, consider picking up some Creepy Fox merchandise, which you can find right below the video player. I've got some awesome designs right here for the summertime that you'll enjoy, so check them out and see what you think. Also, if you'd like to gain early access to brand new videos as well as some exclusive videos, check out the channel memberships option on my page. Anyway, that's going to go ahead and do it for today. I'll talk to you all next time. Take care and have yourself an amazing day.